All right, everyone, we're going to get started. We actually have a pretty, it's a nice sized group today, so we should be able to have a nice discussion afterwards. Just to formally welcome you all, it's great to see you. We are here to discuss spotted lanternfly in the Catskills. This is a virtual panel with some amazing speakers, a lot of expertise here today. And so what we'll be doing is just a few quick things. We're all used to it now, but if you wouldn't mind muting yourself during the presentations, that would be really helpful. And you can also use the chat throughout in order to ask questions, or to, if you have any tech issues, I'll do my best to help you out. And so I'm actually not going to be doing much talking. Again, I should have said this at the beginning, but I'm Connor Young from Cornell Cooperative Extension of Columbia and Greene counties, and I'm joined here by a few Cornell and CCE colleagues, but also some of our partners and a producer who's going to share his experience from further south. So I am going to pass it off to each of them. They can introduce themselves and then share their PowerPoints or their discussion items. And at the end, we'll get together and whether it's through the chat or just unmute yourself, and you can ask a question to any of the individual speakers or more of a general, and they can decide amongst themselves who's going to tackle it. So again, thank you. And if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to John Thompson with CRISP.
Hey everyone, I'm John Thompson with the Catskill Regional Invasive Species Partnership at the Catskill Center. And I'll share my screen here. What I'd like to talk about today is spotted lanternfly. I'm going to focus mostly on how to identify it, how to report it, and also how you could help us by volunteering to look for it. And I'll be talking about the tree of heaven, which is a species that's associated with spotted lanternfly. Can you see my screen okay, Connor?
Oh yeah, it's perfect. Yeah.
Great. Okay. So first I'll start off by talking a little bit about the organization that I work with. The Catskill Regional Invasive Species Partnership is located in the Catskill region, shown in dark green here. Our mission is to promote education, prevention, early detection, and control of invasive species to limit their impact on the ecosystems and economies of the Catskills. It's one of 8 partnerships for regional invasive species management in New York State. And you can see the outlines of all of them here. New York State's completely covered by these prisms, and they're primarily supported from New York State by the Environmental Protection Fund through the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, which administers contracts for all of these prisms. So that's where we're going to be focused on, or I'm going to be focused on at least, is the CRISP region shown there. We'll zoom in on it. Here you can see the outline of the CRISP region is in red. It's about 3.3 million acres. The Catskill blue line is shown within it. That's about 700,000 acres to give you a sense of where we are and how big an area we're looking at. It covers, the CRISP region covers all of Delaware, all of Otsego, all of Schoharie counties, most of Greene, most of Ulster, almost all of Sullivan County, and a little bit of Orange County. And Orange County is where we have spotted lanternfly in the Port Jervis area within the CRISP region, but it's also been moving up the Hudson Valley, and it's also to the west of us now. So we're surrounded on 3 sides at least by this species, the spotted lanternfly, Lycorma dilicatula. It's a species that you can recognize in the adult stage by its gray wings with the black spots. Its hind wings, when it opens them, has bright red with black spots, and also has black with white stripe across. It's a really distinctive insect. It's one that people are generally good about being able to identify, and we want you to report it in New York State, outside of the New York City region, at least, definitely in the CRISP region if you see it. So just briefly, I know other people are going to talk more about impacts, but I just want to mention in the fall, the adult spotted lanternflies will swarm, and the spotted lanternflies themselves will feed on about 70 different species of plants, and they produce what's called honeydew. They excrete it out, and that honeydew itself has a lot of sugars in it, and it could promote sooty mold growth, which could also attract other insects. When you have a lot of these spotted lanternfly, it could have huge impacts for homeowners, and as we'll see later on in the panel, for producers. So it's really important that we identify spotted lanternfly, report it where it is, and it will really help us in managing for spotted lanternfly over the longer term. So I'm going to go over the life cycle of spotted lanternfly and how you can identify each of these different life stages of this insect. Spotted lanternfly itself is a leaf hopper. It doesn't fly really well. It does more of a hopping and flapping. It'll go over short distances, but before it becomes an adult, it has several instars that can crawl. So starting out in the upper right here, I don't know if you can see my mouse here. Maybe you can give me a heads up, Connor, if you could unmute yourself.
We can see it.
Okay, cool. So these are what the egg masses look like. You might mistake them for spots of mud, or they look somewhat similar, although a different color, to the spongy moth egg masses, or what used to be called the gypsy moth. They'll be hatching about now into June, and they hatch into these first instar of that mainly have black bodies with white spots. Those will be appearing from now until June as the eggs hatch. The second and third instars also are black with white spots. Now the instars themselves are going to grow from like 1/8 of an inch in the first instar, a few millimeters, up to about 1/4 of an inch by the third instar. And each of these stages can crawl around. They're not going to fly. Then when you get to the fourth instar, it looks quite a bit different in that the body is like a reddish orange. It has black stripes with these white spots. And then its next stage is the adult stage. That's the one that, if you've seen pictures of it, you've most likely seen pictures of the adult. It has these grayish, pinkish grayish wings here with the black spots. Those will start to appear in July, and they could persist into the fall, into December. They'll start laying their eggs in September and lay them through the fall. That's when they have that swarming behavior, and those eggs is how they overwinter. So this is an insect that has one life cycle per year, and it's going to persist through the winter by its eggs. And this is a species that is able to move a lot, which we'll get into, by laying those eggs on pretty much any flat surface. So those are the places that you would want to look for spotted lanternfly egg masses. It could be on the bench of a picnic table outdoors. It could be on a board that's outdoors, a stone, tree trunks. But looking at this next diagram here will give you a different sense of the different stages of the spotted lanternfly, and that you can see the highlighted bars here will show when there's eggs being laid from late September. Those eggs will persist into May and June, and when those eggs hatch, then you move to the nymphal stages. Then the adults will start to appear in late July or so, and those, as I mentioned earlier, will persist through the fall. So just to look again at these egg masses, they're generally 1 inch long. They're brownish gray and waxy. They look kind of mud-like when they're new, and then they become brown and scaly as they age. And just to point out too that the adult itself will be about 1 inch long and about a 1/4 inch wide, to give you a sense of how big these things are. So that's what we want you to look for. And we want you to know that all life stages could hitchhike on something to a new area. But generally, it's most likely that it's either going to be the egg masses shown on the right or the adults that are going to hitchhike, and that the egg masses, like I said, they could be laid on anything pretty much that's flat or has some type of flat surface. Like here is a camp chair. This camp chair has eggs on it. If someone didn't recognize what they were, they could transport this either from their home to their second home or from a place they're camping back home. You can move spotted lanternfly easily, and that's what we want you to be looking for and knowing what to do if you did see one. Also, the adults are really gregarious. They'll fly around you, they'll fly up your sleeves, they'll fly into your car, or hop into your car. So they can move with you through hundreds of miles. They could also lay their eggs on a car, and that contributes to them being moved over long distances. So this is one way that you could report spotted lanternfly. If you see any of these life stages, you could send a photo to spotted lanternfly at agriculture.ny.gov. There's another web address here there's a form that you could fill out and include a picture of the spotted lanternfly. We'll put these links in the chat for you so that you don't have to try to write it down as I'm talking here. But again, the different stages of what you would look for along the bottom here, from the egg masses to the early nymphs to the late nymphs to the adults. So I wanted to just show you how you could help us to contribute to surveying for spotted lanternfly. There's a spotted lanternfly and Tree of Heaven project that the New York IMAP invasives people have set up. IMAP invasives is an app that you could use to record invasive species throughout the hemisphere. We use it a lot in New York State. It tells us where invasive species are, how much we have, and we track other things through that app. But we're looking for volunteers that could help to monitor for spotted lanternfly and report it through this app. There is a webinar tomorrow, May 25th at 1 p.m. This, I would apologize too, is a screenshot of a web page on the New York IMAP Invasives website, and the address is down in the bottom right of this page, which we'll put that address in the chat. And what we're asking people to do are to survey for these different life stages in these different grid cells that you can see here that range in color from blue to light orange to a darker orange, which we're not showing here, to purple and gray. The gray ones are ones that have been adopted, and the other colors haven't been adopted yet. This is in the crisp region on the kind of northeastern side. Greene County's up here, Ulster County's down here. You can see the Ashokan Reservoir. All of these grid cells, we'd like to have people out there looking for spotted lanternfly. The blue areas are in public parks or state land, generally in our region. Generally, they're around parking areas where there's a lot of traffic and there's a lot of opportunity for spotted lanternfly to be moved and to start to live in those sites. So we're looking for people that could go out like 3 times and 3 or 4 times in these public areas, look for spotted lanternfly on tree trunks or on kiosks or rocks or anything that's around these parking areas, and could report when they find something through the app. And if they don't find something, they can report what are called not detected records if you search for a certain length of time, which we're only asking people to be out for 3 to 10 minutes at each site, but to report whether you found something or not. And when you report that you found something, then the people that need to know will be notified through the IMAPS app. So it's a great way to report spotted lanternfly, and it's a great way to let people know that you found it in a region. So I would hope that we could get some people to volunteer. And this grid covers New York State, so any place you are in New York State, you could adopt a grid cell and you could go out and look for spotted lanternfly. You can also look for tree of heaven, which I'll get into here. Tree of heaven itself comes from Asia, like the spotted lanternfly does. So they have a relationship that came from that continent to our continent. Both are invasive species. The tree of heaven itself is native to China. It was introduced as an ornamental in 1784 in Philadelphia. It's a species that grows to 55 feet tall. It has allelopathic effects on nearby vegetation, meaning that it produces a natural herbicide that inhibits the growth of other plants. And just to quickly go through, it's a plant that typically grows in dense clusters or patches. It has very large compound leaves that could be 3 feet long and have up to 40 leaflets. The leaflets, as you can see in the lower left-hand picture, have little lobes on them at the base. And the thing that's most distinctive about this plant is the flowers, as shown in the lower right, have this kind of acrid smell. And if you crush up the plant, some people describe it as having a smell of burned peanut butter. And these are the seeds in the upper right hand picture here. Species you might confuse the tree of heaven with would be staghorn sumac, maybe. You can see that it has serrated edges along the leaflets of the leaves. It also has those red cones, the staghorn sumac does, of the dense seeds that you see birds eating through the winter. Black walnut has a shorter leaf than the tree of heaven, and its leaves have a lot less leaflets than the tree of heaven, and the bark is quite different as it becomes furrowed and very dark as it ages. If you have any questions about invasive species in our region, the CRISP region that I showed you, feel free to email me. This is a link to our website. You can follow us on Facebook, and we'll keep you up to date with what we're doing and invasive species that we want you to be looking out for. So I appreciate your time today, and I'm gonna hand it over to Jim. I'll stop sharing.
Hey, John, before we move on, quick question. Do you, is tomorrow's webinar recorded? And if so, we had a question if someone needs to register to access that, or can that training be pretty much accessed at any time?
Those trainings are on the New York IMAP Invasives website. There's a whole bunch of videos that show you how to set up an account, how to enter your species, and you could, if you're self-motivated, you could learn on your own. So there are that actual presentation that they'll have tomorrow, there's earlier versions that are already on their website, so that you could learn how to monitor those grid cells from their videos. Yeah.
Great. Thanks very much, John. And it's great to welcome Jim from CCE Ulster here. I'll let Jim share his screen and head to the next session.
Great, thanks, Connor. Make sure I get my thing going here. All right, so as Connor said, I'm with Cornell Cooperative Extension, Ulster County, down here in Kingston, New York. So 233 Plaza Road, Kingston, New York. This is the front of our building. To the right of us is the Catskill Art Supply, and then to the left is the barber shop. So come in and say hello, stop by the art store, get your hair cut, something like that. Just me, just in case you can't see me clearly on the screen here. I'm in the office and it's a little dark. And then a map of where we are, 87 Northway going up and down there. I think Kingston, kind of this quarter way down here to the east of West Hurley and to the west of the Hudson River. When it comes to outreach, Cooperative Extension, Ulster County, going to have this tried and true method. And so getting out there, talking to people directly, invited presentations, farm visits, field events. I'm working with different partnerships. So I'm on this today with the Crisp Region Prism, and then we have the Lower Hudson Prism as well that I partner with. Our media, so we reach out through newsletters, we do press releases, and even online with Facebook and Instagram and other social media. So this top picture here is just kind of an example of some of the invited presentations. This was in Greene County. I made a connection through one of my other workshops with a teacher up at Catskill Montessori. And so they have a number of children there who they tell me are extremely curious. They're constantly looking at things in the field. It's an ag school, and they want to know more about the environment. So I come up and presented about spotted lanternfly, what it is, why it came here, how it came here, why it's important, etc. On the right, this is a standard new press release. So the topic, spotted lanternfly update. When is it going to happen? April 27th. And so then a little blurb about it. And then on our website and also on to the social media, this is pretty similar. It's something you'd see pop up to further the announcements. With farm visits, it's something that I do pretty regularly, one-on-one with the growers. So I'm out there usually in the vineyards talking to growers about issues with their grapevines, dealing with, what are these spots on my vines? Why are they not growing so well? What's going on with my fruit? It looks like there's some rot in there. And it's definitely an important part of the job. The growers, the field is their office. So I'm often going to their office, talking to them, explaining things that I see in the field and trying to troubleshoot what's happening with their vines. And with spotted lanternfly, this is even more important because the farmers, they're pretty busy. They have a lot going on, and they may not often, get to a presentation. They may not know what spotted lanternfly is. But if I come out and they're in the vineyard, I can talk to them. I can walk through and show, what areas you need to watch out for, where spotted lanternfly might lay the eggs. How do they know if they have it? Things of that nature. And so, of course, once we get past the identification part, then the other two things they always want to know is, okay, so how do I get rid of this thing? Once it's here, how do I kill it? And then, reporting it. If I know it's here, who do I, get this out to that needs to come down and take a look at this? And these are things that are important to get out there and keep the growers involved in it. The other aspect is farm worker visits. And so when I work with the extension and I work with the farmers, we send out information through newsletters. We do conferences like this, one-on-one farm visits. Sometimes the information doesn't actually reach the workers, the men and women who are in the field. And so that's why it's important to have a direct contact with these workers and in their language. And typically, many of these workers are Guatemala, Mexican, Latin America, so Spanish is their primary language. And so this picture here on the right, I was fortunate to have Alejandro and other members of New York City IPM down for a visit. And Alejandro is bilingual, he speaks Spanish fluently. And so he was able to come out to the vineyard with me. We went to a local one in Ulster County, and he spoke directly with the workers and tell them about spotted lanternfly. So how to identify spotted lanternfly? They're going to be there in the field working, and it's important that they know what it is and how to identify it, who to notify. And so in this case, it's going to be different. So whereas the general public and farmers would notify ag and markets of finding spotted lanternfly, we don't expect the farm workers to get on the website, click on this link and submit things and send pictures, upload or anything like that. So in this instance, we tell the farm workers, if you find it, if you think you found spotted lanternfly, notify the farmer, notify, if it's a larger farm, notify one of the foremen for them to come out, confirm it, and then, report it to ag markets that way. And then we find that these workers are so interested in learning more. Alejandro spent time with them. They were really captivated by this bug. They really wanted to know more about it, why it's here, what the impact is going to be on grapes. And we think that, yes, with them working in the vineyard, with them being directly involved in the crop on a day-to-day basis, that they will find spotted lanternfly before the farmer does. One of the things we do here with Extension is partnerships, getting involved with others. So in this case, like I said, we're with CRISP on this presentation, but also other avenues, other organizations. Kingston YMCA, I've done presentations there. We've done invasive species walk. I partnered with our colleagues in Dutchess County. In this case, so it was something a little bit different. I knew about spotted lanternfly, and I was familiar with 3D models, and I thought it would just be pretty simple. You just, like you print a piece of paper off of the computer, just print the model. Turns out it was pretty involved process. And so I reached out to the SUNY New Paltz, so State University of New York, New Paltz, HVAMC, so Hudson Valley Additive Manufacturing Center. This picture here is Kat Wilson, the associate director there, and she's actually designing the model on the computer. And so what these are, it's a one-to-one scale model or a lifelike representation of spotted lanternfly. So we have the nymph stages. So the first ones emerge, the black and white. Then the later one, which is the red or orange and black and white. And then the adults. And they're designed in the computer and then printed off. I like them because it's a quick process in the sense that once it's designed, the printer will just print them off. There's no capturing the spotted lanternfly, killing it in alcohol, bringing it back to a lab to pour resin into it, and then making sure that you get all the little holes out of the resin. My other concern with this is that you're capturing spotted lanternfly at the time. It wasn't here in New York, and I didn't really want people going to Pennsylvania to capture spotted lanternfly and bring it back to New York to try and make their homemade models out of this thing and accidentally releasing it. A shameless plug here. This is the Ulster County website. If you really wanted to buy spotted lanternfly models, a set of them is $25, and that gives you the adult and the two nymphs, and they have little magnets on the back, so you can stick them on the fridge. Family will be so excited about these things. If you have any children, grandchildren, they'll probably check out the bug and really want to know what it is. When we talk about media, so whether it's newsletters, social media, video productions, or even radio promotions through the local radio stations, Charlie is the guy for that here in Ulster County. He's our outreach and education manager, and he helps us be seen by the public. The farmers know who I am, and the farmers know to contact us for issues, for grape-related issues, even spotted lanternfly issues. But the public at large, yeah, they've heard of Cornell University, maybe they've heard of Extension. Charlie helps get the word out about us, and then connecting us with these other organizations. So our radio promotions, especially with the Kingston Radio here in Kingston, New York, it's a great connection we have. Public service announcements, they let people know about spotted lanternfly, let them know where they can find more information, whether it's ag and markets, New York City IPM, the regional invasive species programs, or here at CCA Ulster. That's all handled by Charlie. I tell him what I need. I put together things, he sends it out, and then we get it out to the general public. So other things that we do. So I showed you an earlier slide with an invited presentation where I was talking with some children. And then we have the general field events. So we have field workshops. Everyone comes together. Well, not in the past couple of years because of COVID, but in normal years where everyone comes together around a central topic, and we're out in the field discussing these ideas. In the past, partnerships with the Hudson Valley Research Lab and other members of Extension, they've had an invasive field days where they've talked about brown marmorated stink bug, which happens to be another one of these introduced pests from Southeast Asia, and happens also to feed on tree of heaven, Ailanthus. Volunteer days were something new for me. So the Lower Hudson Prism, I've recently in the past couple of years connected with them, and they had said that they needed some extra help. They had a site where there was spotted lanternfly. They needed some people to come out and clear some of the brush so pesticide applicators could come in at a later date. but they also needed people to kind of get in there. And this was later in the fall, so scrape some eggs, catch any remaining adults that happen to be around. So CC Ulster County organized that. We put out the advertisements, and registration and everything went through. I actually believe one of our grower associations. We do hope to do that in the future. We might try and simplify it a little bit and just have the advertisement through us and do registration through Lower Hudson Prism, so that it's just straight to them and they know who's coming and when they're coming. Master gardeners. So in the larger extension organizations, there are volunteers who work directly with the public. I'm a commercial educator, so I work primarily with the commercial growers, making recommendations based on large acreage. Master gardeners, though, are kind of the front line in the office. The public walks in, I have a gardening question. Somebody says, I have a gardening question. I saw this bug, I want to know more about it. They usually end up speaking with the master gardeners. Radio Kingston, so like I mentioned, they're a local radio station. Advertisements, the public service announcements, all those go out through them. It's a great deal, and they even have some Spanish language programming. So if I know ahead of time, I can bring in some materials and get them translated, and then they can, while I'm talking, they have some notes and they can translate directly into Spanish. I myself don't speak Spanish. And then the Catskill Montessori, which we just finished in early May, which was a new partnership for us, getting out there and talking to the children, since they're constantly outside. They're curious. They want to know about their environment, and they pick something up and say, what's this? And so we thought it was a great opportunity to get out there and connect with them. Going forward in the future, so yes, we definitely look to hold more of these volunteer days, get people out there clearing some brush, picking off eggs, and even the other various stages of spotted lanternfly. Carnival cutouts. So if you ever gone to a carnival or any type of fair, even the Ulster County Fair, maybe even some farms have them too. They're usually made out of wood, and they have they're kind of these tourist attraction things where you can poke your head through. There's an opening for that, and you take a photo, and so you look like whatever's on that cutout. So I got a grant with the Lower Hudson Prism, and we're going to do carnival cutouts in the shape of spotted lanternfly. I'm working with a local artist, Star Nigro. She's designing this, and we're doing some construction on this, and it should be great. We will roll this out during Invasive Species Awareness Week, as well as during the Ulster County Fair, where we have thousands of visitors over a 1 week period. This last one here, hack and squirt herbicide, also called frill cuts. It was something new that I'm planning for the future. We know that spotted lanternfly feeds on Atlantis tree of heaven. We know that it's a invasive species itself, and oftentimes the first reaction from somebody, whether it be a homeowner or a commercial grower, is to cut down tree of heaven and get rid of it. And on true points, that's not good. On one, tree of heaven, if you cut that down, it runners or suckers along the root zone. And that makes things worse. Then you have all this fresh, nice new growth that spotted lanternfly can feed on. The other thing is if you're cutting down all tree heaven as a discriminant of whether it's a male or female, you have nothing left then to create as a trap plant. So the idea behind this hack and squirt workshops, field events, is to demonstrate how to apply the herbicide directly into the tree of heaven. So instead of spraying the bark, you're making a small cut, directly applying the herbicide, and looking to kill the female trees so that they don't spread, so the seed doesn't spread, and then leave the males as a trap tree. So I realize talking a lot about that. It hasn't happened yet, so I don't have any nice pictures. Otherwise, I have another whole slide for that. So kind of a good news, bad news, or bad news, good thing, and what can we expect with spotted lanternfly? It's definitely here. It's going to continue to spread. Might as well get that out and talk about that. It's damaging. It's a damaging pest to certain crops. So certainly to grapes, there are possibilities that it affects other crops as well. We're learning more as we go. For homeowners, so if you are growing grapevines as a homeowner or a backyard homesteader, yes, it's going to be a damaging pest to your grapevines, but it's also a nuisance pest. So it's important to know that it doesn't bite, it doesn't sting, it's not poisonous, but they do come in large numbers, they do congregate, and when they're feeding, they do excrete, for lack of a better word, poop, I guess you'd say. The technical word, before we used was honeydew, but it's in what I've heard in Pennsylvania is that it's kind of raining poop. People are in their backyard, and the population is so loud and so large, it's just coming right down on them, and it's disgusting. It's a nuisance. It's something to know about. On the good news side of things, so trying to get the bad news out of the way first and show you the silver lining. Right now, there is a large ongoing collaborative effort with a grant. So SCRI is Specialty Crop Research Initiative. It's a grant that focuses on specialty crops, important crops like grapevines, and it's a multi-state project. So Pennsylvania is involved in it. New York State with both Cooperative Extension and New York State IPM are involved. There are researchers in Massachusetts that are involved in this as well, and other parts of the country. So the idea behind it is to come up with strategies to combat against combat spotted lanternfly. So in my part, I'm doing the education and outreach. What is spotted lanternfly? Be on the lookout for it. How do I know I found it? What do I reported? Those kinds of things. IPM, integrated pest management. So looking at managing spotted lanternfly hosts, the pesticides involved in managing spotted lanternfly itself, but also long-term biological control. So this is an invasive species where it's native. There's something that controls it. Long-term, this grant is looking at the possibility of introducing these biological controls to manage spotted lanternfly. And then this grant is also looking at past experiences and slowing the spread. So I mentioned earlier brown marmorated stink bug. And when it first got here, it was pretty similar to spotted lanternfly, invasive pest, damaging to certain crops. So in apples, it can really damage the fruit, make them unmarketable, and cause economic loss to growers. What they have learned, so the research has shown ways to control it, and researchers are still continuing to look on biological controls. Slowing the spread. So we know that we can't stop spotted lanternfly right now, at least. The biological control probably won't stop at 100%, but say 80% or better, hopefully. And so right now, what we're doing is we're trying to, through the education and outreach, is to slow the spread, make people aware of the life stages of spotted lanternfly, how it moves from one area to another, and have them check their vehicles, have them check the equipment that they're moving, just so that they don't transport it from one area to another. So then wrapping this up, yes, we know that spotted lanternfly is a challenge to everybody in our growing community, to the public, to homeowners. We do, so educators like myself, and hopefully with the general public, we are getting regular updates and as fast as we can, getting out the information about these new developments. Outreach through our community, through update and educate about spotted lanternfly. Myself, update and educate myself. Brian Eschenauer, who will be talking after me, has a monthly meeting for professionals and that are directly involved with spotted lanternfly. It gets information, the latest information tells us what's happening, who's managing what, and other ideas that have come up about control and topics of biological control for the long term. And then, like I said, continue to learn, keep myself educated so that I can, make new decisions on spotted lanternfly as well as new connections. These are a couple of our administrative assistants. Actually, Kate here on the right is an administrative assistant. Courtney was our administrative assistant. She's since become our master gardener coordinator. And she and I spent a lot of time together talking about spotted lanternfly. So she's a great resource. If you stop by the office and I'm not here, you can certainly talk to Courtney and she can fill you in about spotted lanternfly. So with that, just a thank you. And I'm going to stop sharing and turn this over to Brian and answer questions when we're done.
Yeah, thanks very much, Jim. And,
all right.
Yeah, you're ready.
Thank you, Jim. All right, how's that look? Is it the full screen or?
We have the presentation view. If you just click that's great. Yep.
Great. All right. So I just have some images here. Some of it will be just a little bit of review, but we're going to hit some of the high points here. You heard that this is an invasive plant hopper, feeds on over 100 different species, especially when it's young. As it ages, when you see these adults out there in the summer, then it has much fewer. It really likes certain trees, including the tree of heaven. In fact, if it has access to that, it's going to do so much better. Also, black walnut, willow, red maple, and really sadly for the vineyards in the Hudson Valley, grapes are an important host. And you'll hear from the next speaker about the impact it can have on vineyards. And this is a shot from Pennsylvania of a vineyard that was killed due to the late feeding of the spotted lanternfly, not on the fruit themselves, but on the vine, weakened the vines and made them less winter hardy. And so they didn't make it through the winter. So we want to prevent that from happening here. And fortunately, Pennsylvania has shared some great information on control and management. So we feel like we have a handle on that, and we won't allow that to happen in New York. You heard about Ailanthus, the tree of heaven. And it is important. If during its life cycle, spotted lanternfly has access to it, it can lay 7 times the number of eggs, and it can begin laying its eggs weeks earlier, which can be important because it doesn't begin laying eggs until September. And if it is shut down, if it doesn't start early, it could get shut down by frost before it really has a chance to lay eggs. So that's important. And we might think, just cut down the tree of heaven. But if you do that, this little illustration here is showing that it will just sprout up. And so you'll have more trees in time than if you just left that one alone. So there are techniques to use herbicides. And one is called hack and squirt, where you create an opening in the vascular tissue and you put an herbicide in there to systemically control the entire tree. Here's a picture I took last year. Actually, over on the left is a little video of spotted lanternfly egg mass right around mid-May, just a few days before now. I think it was the 15th of May last year. And there you can see the young spotted lanternfly have just hatched from that egg mass there. Got a close-up of one on the right, but they're just starting to crawl away there. They don't have that jet black color right away. It's more of a whitish gray, and it quickly darkens up to that black color. All right, and here's the business end of a spotted lanternfly. Flipped over, spotted lanternfly adult. Take a look right there. That is a big needle, you might say. That proboscis goes right in through the bark. It is smart. It has sensory organs on it. It taps in right into the vascular tissue that it's interested in. And then instead of the sap flowing up through the tree, some of it's diverted. It's forced through this insect, and the insect filters out what it wants. And as was mentioned, this honeydew comes out on the other side, and that can be quite a nuisance. We have that pictured here in a little video. Let's see if my video will work here. I'm not seeing that, but anyway, the honeydew does come out of the backside of these insects. Here are some pictures of them congregating. Now, I want to be clear that this doesn't happen to every tree. When spotted lanternfly becomes established in your county, you will not see this on every tree. Spotted lanternfly picks out a few trees. It tends to go back to those trees every year, but it happened to be, this was a site in Pennsylvania last year. It was my brother's front yard, and there they are congregating there on a silver maple. And my sister-in-law posted the picture on the right on Facebook and got a lot of responses from that right away within 2 days. And you can see there's all kinds of advice. Some of it we certainly would not recommend. We're not recommending the blowtorch. There's some off-labeled use of household products and some misattribution that they're killing blue spruce. These will not affect any conifers at all. You might find them there, but they cannot feed on any pine or other evergreen. Somebody suggests using a shop vac to suck them off. I guess that's not going to hurt anything, but do change that canister, because if they rot, they don't smell good. But the important thing is not to panic. As Jim already mentioned, they don't bite, they don't sting, they can't survive indoors. It's only about 48 hours off a host before they die, depending on the temperature. They need that moisture that they're getting from the vascular tissue of a tree. So they're not going to survive for too long off of that. And the good news is, even that tree that had all of those spotted lanternfly on it, the health of that tree is not threatened. Grapes, on the other hand, they're smaller, they have less reserves, and those can be killed. But our landscape trees are showing very little impact due to spotted lanternfly, and certainly not killed. And no, they can't kill us. This was a Google prompt. And just as a reminder where it is, this was the first place it was identified in New York. This isn't a part of, this is Staten Island. It was found in parklands in the southern end of Staten Island, but just an aerial view. And it has made the news. This was last year, and we're anticipating that as the populations build in the other 5 boroughs in New York City and work their way up the Hudson Valley, there will be more headlines like this as more people see this insect. So just be aware that that's coming. A colleague of mine took this picture on Manhattan last year, and there it was. I think this is kind of an interesting shot because the insect is there, wasn't noticed very much, but sure enough, these were laying eggs, and there will be more this year. Many people don't notice those early instars, but the adults certainly are noticed. And here were some. They were at the base of a very, very tall building. They were probably thinking it was a tree looking to feed, and without that food, they fell to the bottom there and died. So it is spreading around. Here's where it started in Pennsylvania, and rail corridors are implicated as one place that they're moving from. We also saw them on truck tires. This was at Orangeburg, the location there. Those photos I took last year. So we have to be very careful, as other presenters said today, about moving them. They can lay their egg masses on anything, and the adults can get into trunks and into our cab of a truck and into the regular part of our car as well. I will mention that there is a map, so you can check out where it is located and where it isn't. And it's really important not to move it to a new area. So if you are in an area that is infested, we want to really inspect anything that's outdoors carefully so you're not moving those insects around. And just because a county is colored in doesn't mean the entire county is infested. In these upstate counties, the majority of them are not infested at this point, but we just color in the entire county. And that information is available on our website. And I'm going to skip to that because this is important. So the map is there, and through our New York State IPM website, you can find a reporting portal, and that goes right to what Ag and Markets has set up. So you'll get an automated response as soon as you report that. We really want that from areas, even within a county that has it, but is not widespread. So anywhere really outside of the New York City area, if you see it, go ahead and report it. And if it does get in your tree eventually, in your landscape, you can use some tree traps. We're using those right now for monitoring, but they can be used to collect hundreds of insects and prevent them from becoming a nuisance in your backyard. These are 2 types, a circle trap and a sticky bug barrier. Both of these, they prevent bycatch, and that would be catching things you don't want, like a chipmunk or a bird that might get stuck to otherwise using a wideband sticky material. Also, as I finish up here, I'll mention that we do have insecticides as an option, and that'll be on a sidebar on our New York State IPM website. If you click on that, you'll go to this page that has the insecticides. There'll be one for use on grapes. If you're a grape grower, you would go there, and for the rest would be landscape and home garden use. Because leafhoppers are not very common as a pest that we're controlling, the number of products available to homeowners isn't great, but we do anticipate that that will be increasing. And if you click on that you'll get a table like this, which will indicate the product and where it can be used and the kind of control. Turns out it's not difficult to control spotted lanternfly. The problem is the numbers, and they can keep coming in to a crop like grapes from the outside. So I think with that, I'll wrap up, and we'll look forward to questions after our last speaker.
Thanks very much, Brian. You just want to stop sharing, we can welcome Zach Waltz as our final speaker tonight. Today. So Zach, if you're all set there, we can. Yeah, great.
You see my screen?
Yeah, we can see it fine.
Okay.
It's in presentation mode. Yep, there you go.
Cool. So yeah, Brian gave a really good introduction there when it comes to grapevine. So here in Pennsylvania, we've now, at least in Lancaster County here, we've been dealing with the lanternflies for the past 3 years. So we definitely have a good amount of experience with managing them. I will say, in terms of commercial plant viability, grape growers definitely do stand the most to risk with this pest. We are far past the identification and quarantine with this pest. We are just in full control mode because they've completely infested the entire state. So that's basically my presentation, is just going to be showing some of the methods I've used to be able to control them. And unlike one of the vineyards that Brian just showed, we haven't sustained vine loss at this point because we've been proactive in our management with it. Fortunately, Penn State has been very helpful in sharing that knowledge, and I'm sure that you guys will as well in New York State. I think it's extremely important that grape growers are made aware, not that just this pest is coming, but also that they need to be extremely proactive if they want to save their crops here. So like I said, 2019 was the first year that we saw a few lanternflies in the vineyard. But what was really surprising was the following year in 2020, we went from a handful of lanternflies to countless thousands of lanternflies invading the vineyard. So the increase in population is extremely fast, and you have to be prepared for it. And so what you can see here in this first slide is this is our vineyard in Lancaster County. So what you can notice is the amount of woodlands that are adjacent to the vineyard. So there's different patches of woodlots, and that is where the lanternflies will spend most of the spring and summer. And so while grape growers might think to just wait until they enter the vineyard, what we've found is that it's very helpful to go be proactive and look for those populations in the early summer and spray them in the woodlots to help limit and decrease that local population before they enter the vineyard, making it easier to manage it once they do get to the vineyard. So this next slide, this shows, this is right around this time of year in May, and this is on a sapling of the tree of heaven. And you can see how the nymphs tend to really congregate on these saplings. Now, it looks kind of scary because of how many there are, but I look at this as an opportune time to manage this pest because you have so many in such a small area. Your spraying can be very efficient, and you can really decrease the population at that time.
Hey, Zach, can you just hit, I'm seeing it in slideshow, not in presentation mode. You can just hit the button.
Yep. I tried to hit the arrow and it didn't go to the next slide. Okay, here we go.
Now it's reversed. You're, you got it backwards.
Display settings. If you go up to where it says display settings and click on that, you can change it to the other one, and it should change it to the
How's that?
Yep.
swap presenter view and slideshow.
There we go. Thanks for the help.
Yep, thank you. Okay, so this slide is showing Penn State had put up some sticky traps all around the tree of heaven. And you can see how this is a really effective tool for catching nymphs in that early season and also monitoring your local population This was actually one day after putting up that sticky trap. We'd accumulated that many thousands of nymphs on one tree. So they really do tend to congregate to very small areas. So this doesn't mean you don't have to spray an entire woodlot with that pesticide. You can really narrow your efforts to those select locations where the tree of heaven are, and really make a big impact on the population. And so moving to vineyards, so this is also same time of year in May. You'll also start to see the nymphs in the vineyards, and especially in vineyards that have metal posts. As Brian was saying, they like to lay their eggs on metal, and if your vineyard has metal posts, you're going to see a lot more of them there early season. We don't find that it's really necessary to target spray the nymphs in the vineyard at this time of year, because they're really not posing any damage to the vines. They can't really suck much sap out of the vines at this point. So what we do is we just rely on any other spray insecticide that we would be using for, say, something like Japanese beetles in July, that should take care of this population in the vineyard at that time. And so what we decided in the first year, we needed a tool that would allow us to spray the treetops of the tree of heaven that we couldn't reach with our normal sprayers. And so we purchased what's called a mist sprayer. They use these out west for different nut trees, and it's a really, really fine mist. And the purpose of that is that it's a lot lighter in the air, and the spray can travel much further distances. So we purchased the 3-point mounted PTO driven model from A1 mist sprayers. And then what you can see on the right hand side, they also make truck bed mounted versions. And this is what the Pennsylvania Department of Ag purchased to spray things like railroads and telephone lines and things like that had high concentrations of lanternflies on public areas. And so we found that this tool is extremely effective in controlling the lanternflies. And I think in the Catskills, it would also be extremely useful for treetops, because they do tend to crawl up the tree and migrate up to higher areas. So you need something that will reach that. The one caveat with this machine is there cannot be any wind when you spray it. And obviously that's kind of hard to find certain days, but it is really important that you wait for a day, typically in the morning or the late evening, when there's no wind, so that spray is not whisked away. It can actually reach the tops of those trees. So that's really important to communicate that with anybody that would be operating these, especially when it comes to, state fleets and things like that. Here's just a picture demonstrating what that looks like. This is a large plot of the tree of heaven that is next to our vineyard. And you can see how high up that spray can get on a day with no wind. And it really will continue to drift kind of like a fog through that entire woodlot. And it has a really incredible reach for the limited amount of spray. You're using a lot less material than you would with a normal air blast sprayer. And this is just another version of a sprayer. This is not a mist sprayer. This is a normal air blast with a cone that's directed with a really high wind turbine, powerful wind turbine, and a lot of spray nozzles. You can achieve the same effect with the mist sprayer. The only difference here is you'd be using a lot more chemicals. But the nice thing about this is you wouldn't have to wait for a day with no wind. These machines will be effective on, up to 5-mile-an-hour winds. And so here's a picture of the result after we sprayed in the woods and in the vineyard. So typically there will be a lot more lanternflies there than what you think there are. So on the right-hand side, this was the base of a maple tree in the fall that we sprayed. And we sprayed this with bifenthrin. The reason we chose bifenthrin is because it has a really long residual activity. So we can expect this to control lanternflies for up to 30 days where it's sprayed, it's just a contact insecticide. So we don't want to have to be spraying the woods constantly every week. So we'll spray this 2 or 3 times throughout the summer in the woodlots, and it seems to have a really effective control that way. And then on the left side, this is a tubed vine, and young grapevines are particularly sensitive to lanternfly feeding because they don't have a lot of sap flow. It only takes a few lanternflies to do significant damage to that vine. So you can see at the base of this tube how many lanternflies were actually inside of that tubed vine. And certainly that was enough to kill that vine had we not sprayed for them. Here's just a video in the vineyard, on a mature vineyard, of how many within a day or two after spraying can continually come into the vineyard. And this would be on the perimeter of the vineyard, but it certainly gets to be a large population very quickly. And this would certainly be enough lanternflies, given a few days to a week of feeding, that could significantly injure that vine or even kill that vine. And so I wanted to go over what I've learned over the past few years on what I find to be effective control methods, and then what I have tried and doesn't seem to work very well. So like I mentioned, what does work very effectively is spraying different tree lots of the tree of heaven with bifenthrin. There's different product names out there, like Tall Star Pro is one of the products that I use that contains bifenthrin. And then I've also seen Penn State has come out on certain larger tree of heaven, and they've done dinotephuran injections. And I would say they're more expensive, but that is certainly the best way to control large populations on those trees. And that's because that injection will last 3 to 6 months in that tree. So any lanternflies that feed on that tree will die almost immediately, and you can see over time the amount of them at the base of the tree that pile up. It is extremely effective. And in the vineyard, here's just a few of the pesticides that I've used with great success. So these are also pesticides that we happen to use for other pests. So it's nice when you can combine multiple pest species with one spray. So Mustang Max, Danitol, Malathion, Leverage 360, and Bifenture are extremely effective. And then outside of that normal spray schedule in the vineyard, you don't have to spray the entire vineyard to have effective control most of the season. So perimeter sprays are typically enough to get control, because the lanternflies don't move very fast through the vineyard. They typically get to the first few vines in the row and they start feeding there. So by having that mist sprayer or an air blast sprayer directed and just driving around the outside of the vineyard, you can kill a majority of them that are there and prevent most of the damage. And I've tried a few things that haven't worked very well. So there is a biopesticide out there with the active ingredient being called Bavaria bassiana. That's like a fungus that you spray on, and it's supposed to infect the body of the lanternfly and kill it slowly. The problem with Bavaria is that it's very sensitive to environmental conditions. So if you don't have the right temperature, humidity, shade, all these factors really affect the viability of Bavaria. So it may work on certain sites, but it's not a be-all end-all effective product from my experience. I've seen a lot of people talking about Sevin, or with the active ingredient carbaryl. We've tried this. This is a really popular, retail pesticide that you can find at a lot of stores. From my experience, it is not nearly as effective as most other pesticides. So just a warning with that one. Other specific pesticide would be Delegate. We've tried it. That doesn't really do much. And these last two points come with a caveat. This is more specifically for vineyards. where we have extremely high populations of lanternfly. Scraping eggs doesn't seem to have much of an impact because the majority of the eggs in the area are really high up in trees where you wouldn't be able to see them or find them anyways. So it seems more of like when you have limited on time and resources, scraping eggs is not the best use of your time. And then as Brian had mentioned about, removing the Atlantis trees, there's some issues there. You want to use herbicide if you're going to do it. What I've found though is that I like to have some Atlantis trees around because they actually attract the lanternflies to the tree early season, and it makes it easier to find them and control them in the early season. So I would say that if you're going to remove Atlantis trees, I would still keep a few of the larger ones around so that you can find the lanternflies in the early season and control them. And that's pretty much all my points. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thanks a lot, Zach. Well, all right. Well, again, thanks to all the speakers. It was really, it was great to hear from all of you. I think at this point, we don't have any pending chat questions. So if anyone, even the speakers, if you wanted to add or clarify anything, or even speak, to each other's work, or if anyone wants to unmute themselves, our group is small enough, that's totally fine.
So this is Jim O'Connell, and I just want to say, Zach, I think that was helpful with the perimeter spraying and the fine mist, because I've seen spotted lanternfly here, but not at the population levels you have in Pennsylvania. And I think my impression had been that it swarms in and moves in, and you're going to need to hit the whole vineyard.
Yeah, I do think that is the general impression at first, that people think that they're just going to have to spray their entire vineyard every few days. But the reality is there is a compromise there that you can do perimeter sprays and get the control that you're looking for. And we've been very successful with that.
Hey, Brian, I had a quick question. Maybe it's directed to you, but I was wondering what you're finding with other types of fruit growers, whether it's apple, peach, plum, like any other, even small fruit. What you're finding in general impacts and what the trend is there.
Yeah, good question. And I should have mentioned that. And I'm sure Zach can chime in because our information is coming from our colleagues at Penn State, including a big fruit growing region in Biglerville, PA, and they are not seeing any impact, fortunately, on apples. And of course, apples are a big crop in the Hudson Valley too. It does occur, so you can find spotted lanternfly, even spotted lanternfly clustering on apple trees, but they're not seeing an impact to the tree health or the fruit, and they don't stay there for a long period of time. So they'll be there for a short period of time. They won't stay like they will on grapes. So good question. They're also closely looking at other plants as well. There's a little bit when the spotted lanternfly are caged in an area, they will cause some slight yellowing to peach trees, but that's in an artificial research situation. It's not been seen like that in the field. Some home gardeners have seen them on cucumbers in Pennsylvania, but in commercial settings, it's not been noticed. Zach, do you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that in the beginning, there were things saying that most crops, commercial crops, were at risk. I think now through a few years of experience, we've learned that they mainly prefer tree of heaven and grapes, and most other crops are relatively unharmed.
Right. Yeah. I used to have a picture of spotted lanternfly on apple trees, but when we found out that it's not damaging, I've taken that out of my slide deck. Yeah.
Did anyone else have any questions they wanted to ask any of the speakers? Well, I know I only had one other, and all of you can jump in, but Another common question we have is related to hardwoods, mainly maple. And you mentioned oak, Brian. I was wondering what kind of, even if it's producers like maple producers or just woodlot owners and managers, stewards, what kind of things should they be prepared for? Mist sprayers may not be applicable in those situations.
Yeah, they tend to like the forest edge. So if you're, you have a woodlot and you're harvesting those trees, not seeing a big problem there. I think the larger concern would be moving the wood out and having a quarantine established and then knowing where it would be acceptable to move that wood to. I think that's been an issue in parts of Pennsylvania where the lumber industry is located, and there's some concerns there. But as far as the forest health, although it can be found feeding on forest trees, we're really not seeing a detrimental impact to those trees.
All right, I can't be the only one asking questions, so I'll defer to the group, or we can thank the speakers again and enjoy the nice weather we have here.
Well, maybe I have one question for Zach there in Pennsylvania. Just wondering about the customers there at the winery and how they are feeling about spotted lanternfly, and if they have questions or issues about spotted lanternfly.
It's no doubt is the number one question that we get now is how are the lanternflies affecting us? And yeah, it's definitely on everyone's mind, especially because as much as we're suffering from them in the vineyard, everybody's seeing them on their houses, and they're also they want to know how they can best deal with them around their houses. So it's definitely an opportunity to educate people and what they can do at their homes. A lot of people asking me how they can treat their trees, and giving them my limited advice and experience with that. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of concern, but I think that's a good thing to know that people are wanting to know more about it.
Yep. Thanks.
Well, all right. I think everyone is mentioned here, but that you can, obviously everyone seems open to being contacted, and there are a bunch of links in the chat. As a measure of follow-up, I'm going to be saving this recording and we'll upload it to YouTube because a lot of people couldn't make it today, but we want to make sure it's accessible. So that will be sent out to this group, and you're free to share that within your networks and beyond. We also will I'll try to summarize these links and send them in that same email to you all, so you have them for reference. Thank you all again, and especially a thanks to all our speakers for joining us today. It was it's a pleasure having you, and we really appreciate your time.
Thanks for all the information, you guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.